Welcome to our Webcurl on-demand webinar. This presentation follows on from a previous example which looked at logging fly tipping in the Oxfordshire area. We received a number of requests to show exactly how easy it is to create the demonstration that we showed previously. The whole process of creating an integrated CRM form should take no longer than about 10 to 15 minutes to complete and can be achieved by somebody that is not a technical expert. So I'm now logged into the Webcurl portal as a full administrator, and you can see on the screen at the moment the fly tipping example that we showed in the previous webinar. The fly tipping example has a map at the top which has markers, and then underneath you have the ability to either view an existing case or you can create a new case using the fields that are on display. What we're going to do is go ahead and actually create a new example, but this is based upon abandoned cars. And it's going to have exactly the same layout as you can see here, so that you can see how easy and how quick it is to go ahead and create one of these new web forms from scratch. So now, using the admin menu options, I'm going to create a brand new web form. So use the content menu to go and create that, and then go and give it a title of abandoned vehicles. Once I've done that, I then have the option to connect it back to my CRM system, and I'm going to use the same example that I did with fly tipping and pick Dynamics 365. I then have the option as to what base entity I want to base my form on. That could be a standard entity, or in my example, I'm actually going to create a brand new entity from scratch. And that will actually go ahead and create that entity back into Dynamics 365. So before I go to the form layout and the preview, let's head into Dynamics and just check that that's created correctly. I'm going to open up the Customize the System view and then just open up the entities to check that abandoned vehicles have been created correctly. It has. I can see that entity's in there. And actually, if I open that up and look at the fields, I can see it's also added in some standard fields in there as well that we'll utilize at a later date. Great, so I'm now going to go back to my portal and go back to my web form and now design my layout so it looks really similar to the fly tipping example. I'm going to create a layout row and add some columns in. So I'm going to have a single column at the top, which is going to have my map element in, and then underneath I'm going to have a two-column display underneath, which will have my case details. You'll see how easy it is to adjust the display of this web form. Underneath each element there are properties where I can go ahead and adjust the column width. I can decide if I want to show titles and borders. In my example, I'm going to remove these and actually make the row itself have a title of new case. So I'll go ahead and each element I just hit the pencil mark to the right hand side, the properties will appear below, and I can then update the form accordingly and then save that form to commit it. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with my display. I now want to go ahead and add in the correct fields and attributes onto the form so that the users have got something to fill in. The first section I want to address is the new case area, and on the right hand side you can see all of the different fields that are available to me to drag and drop onto the form. This includes the Dynamics 365 entities. So I actually want to go ahead and add in those new case fields and find title and description. I can scroll down for those, or I can use the filter option to quickly find them. And then once I've selected them, just go ahead and drag and drop them from the right hand side over to the left. So I've now added in case title and description, and I want to go ahead and also add the option to be able to upload a picture. So I'm now going to go and do a quick search for a CRM annotation for document upload. I'll go and find that from my drop down list and again drag and drop that onto the form. Very similar to the way I've just added those fields in. Now this is great because all of these fields are connected back to Dynamics 365, so if I want to report on them later, I can do that and also conduct searches on them as well. So as I upload these fields, you can see just the same as I did with the columns, I can then update the properties, give it a new title, decide if I want to display that, and decide again its width and its values, and also set default values as well if that's appropriate. You'll see here as I start to update my title, the forms itself have spell check built in, so it'll always spot an error if you have one in your form. I can then go ahead and start to add my new fields accordingly until I'm really happy that my new case section is complete. So I'm now going to turn my attention back to the map element at the top of the form. I'll drag and drop CRM map over to the very first row and then edit the properties to then go and remove the title and the borders. Now maps are great, they automatically filter based upon the type of form it's attached to, and in this case it's going to be abandoned vehicles. So the very first thing I need to do is define my view and make sure that my case relationship is set up so that my filters work correctly. I also want to ensure then that the markers that appear on the map also relate back to the relevant case that it's applicable to. So once I've given my view a name, I can then go ahead and select the content that I'd like to be displayed in there. In this example, I'd like it to return any of the form submissions that have come through from my portal. I can then filter that down further in the advanced settings. What I'd like to do now is make sure I decide the format of how I'd like it to be displayed. Now this could be a table or in my example a map. I hit continue and then go through to the edit screen so I can then start to set my advanced settings. So now as I open up my advanced settings, I can start to define the relationship between the form submission and Dynamics 365. I select the case ID as the unique identifier, and then once I've done that, I can define what fields I would like to have displayed underneath the map. So I'm adding in a selection of case fields that I think would be very relevant for the form. This includes items such as case owner, case ID, subject, longitude, latitude, and these fields can all be defined from the search box. I can select them and then add them into the display. So now I'm happy with that view. I'm going to go and save that away and head back to my layout form. If I select back on CRM map and look at the properties, I now have the option to actually select that view and I can select that page in the drop down box. You'll see new GMap Dynamics. I'll select on that page and then I'll head through to the CRM mapping to make sure that I map through the most important fields, and that is the longitude and latitude. If I go in here, I can make sure that I'm selected onto case. And if I go to my latitude mapping and longitude mapping, I can make sure that I select the correct fields. Now this is really important because when I go and create a new case, it can go ahead and make sure it maps the right data into those fields. And obviously if it's an existing case, then the system knows where to pull that data from. So now once I've saved my form, I'm going to go and view my map and just check that it functions correctly. So in here I can see, here's my red marker. I'm going to move that to a location where there's potentially an abandoned vehicle that I'd like to submit. I'm then going to go and create that case, make sure I fill in all the key details that I'd like the customer service rep to understand. So I can see that there's a car in the middle of the road, I can fill in the description. I can also upload a photo of that vehicle so that you can see a picture of where it's located. And if I'd like to receive updates, which in this case I would, I can start to fill in my email address as well, so essentially I can follow this case. So once I've done that, I'm going to go and submit that form and ensure that then that goes and creates a case back into Dynamics. But before I do that, you'll see that this has created a marker that now appears on my map. If I select on that marker, I would expect to see the key case details have then been created below in the form. And you'll see that the fields that are displayed there are the ones that I created earlier in my view. So I'm now going to cross over to Dynamics 365 and look in the dashboard to check that my case has been created. As I select on that case, it will drill me down into that record and I can then start to see the key information that I'd filled in earlier, including the upload of that car image, and also I can see that it's connected back to the web form that I originally created. Thank you for taking the time to view our short webinar which drilled into how we created our web forms that then submit into CRM. Should you like further information, please don't hesitate to visit our website or get in contact.